uh, when I remember my times when I was very young and I was kid, I remember my father taking me to the bookstore every time we used to go out, to the market. So we used to go to the bookshop, and the beautiful thing I remember from there is that I inculcated this book reading habit from there itself, because he always let me buy every book I liked. Every book I used to point out that, Papa, this is the book I want to buy. He never asked me why, he just let me buy. So that was the interest created gradually. And in my house, we used to have a lot of books, different types of books, surrounded in the drawing room, in the lobby, and also in my room. He never asked me that, why are you reading this book? He used to always ask me, what did you read in this book? So that is the beautiful skill. And this is what I would like to also recommend to every parent. Foster the skill of reading rather than telling them what to read. Because if they learn to read, they are going to definitely inculcate, develop that beautiful habit of reading. And once that is inculcated, for sure they're going to read and study every book which comes long way. Because now what I see in these young minds, that they see a lot of things on the technology, on the web, and everything is there available on internet. But that doesn't mean just because everything is available on the internet, we shouldn't be having those hardbound books. Hardbound books are very important, because once we touch these books, the feel which comes in, that is very important, sir. What do you say, sir?
Thank you. I think that's a good beginning. And I remember during the international webinar on 19th, it was very well discussed that instead of booking a gift, it's time to gift a book now. And I think we all need to recover our thoughts and emotions and put them into consolidated, beautiful pages and help the young authors. I feel adolescents of India are wonderful authors. You saw the debate in the morning, the Utopia, the Young Orators Championships, the samples of that from all over the country. And there are more than 1,000 entries of those youngsters who've actually given us their opinions. After all, they have been reading about it. Only when they read, they're able to share their verbal and non-verbal expressions. And that's the whole idea of this summit, Rika ma'am, Hemlata ji, and Prachita. Now we are about to begin. I hand over to you, Rekha ma'am. Let's welcome our I would say, he's such a good human being. Apart from being a great author and a writer, I call him Professor Vikram ji, Professor Kumar Vikram. He has been able to transform the thinking process about the publications which the NBT India is bringing forward for the youth of the nation. So we'll welcome sir and start the workshop today. Let's see how the journey goes. I understand what you said. When we look at Rabindranath Tagore, we look at Shri APJ Abdul Kalam ji, when we read about the books by Rudyard Kipling, Ruskin Bond, R.K. Narayan, Anita Desai, we talk of Oscar Wilde, we talk of Mark Twain, we talk of Shakespeare, Bernard Shaw, Charles Dickens, and of course, we have great historians across the world. And we have our youngsters, our adolescents who are very familiar with Tolstoy, with many other great authors who influenced even Mahatma Gandhi, Swami Vivekananda, the Stuart Mill. So today's journey is actually motivating, helping youngsters, our adolescents, India, to actually collect ideas for a better socio-cultural exploration of book reading. This is the time. This is a time that India is going through a transition. We have a large population of young people, and that transition invites not only knowledge but also skill development. We heard the youngsters in the morning, the adolescents, they spoke about life skills as a very integral, inevitable part of growth, development. But where does it come from? It comes from so many varieties of cultures incorporated in good books, in very short stories which tell us the view of life, the goal of life, and they also motivate us. So today we are going to talk about that, and I'm sure we have none other than Kumar Vikram ji to share with us. So I request you, Rekha ma'am, to move on with the welcome and the introduction. We'll invite Hemlata ma'am, a very noted counselor, to kindly give us a few, aspects about book reading after Rekha ji, and then we begin with Vikram sir. Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jitendra Nagpal, sir. Ninth International Adolescent Summit 2020, inaugurated on 18th of December by our Honorable Union Minister, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishankji. And today, a very well executed and a highly interactive workshop that was the screening which happened in the morning with all the young adolescents all around. I would say 12,000 young adolescents and teachers and principals has joined us in the morning also, and a very invoking appreciation has been received for this particular screening by a lot of students. We have been just overwhelmed by all these beautiful messages which you people are sending to us. So thank you so much, and let's begin with this beautiful workshop, the webinar, which is the technical beginning to the entire 3-week long summit, which is starting from today. Young Orators and Book Reading Session, International Adolescent Summit 2020. So I welcome all of you. I welcome all the principals, teachers, students, all the young adolescents, and our guest uh, for today, Sri Kumar Vikramji, Senior Editor with India's national body, National Book Trust India, for book promotion and book publishing for more than 2 decades. He's an editor, he's a poet, he's a writer, and a book diplomat. He has ingrained belief in the healing nature of book reading. And every time, sir, I have heard you speaking, it has been a delight. And I'm sure all the people who have joined in today, these young mites are equally going to be delighted today. Sir, you have edited numerous books for children and young adults, Indian literature in English translation, Indian art and culture, etc. And you have participated in various literary and publishing roundtables in India and abroad. And it's a privilege to have you here with our young adolescents. So before we begin with Sir, I would request Hemlata ma'am to just give a brief introduction to the workshop and also the importance to book reading. And then we move on to our Sri Vikram, Kumar Vikram sir with the technical beginning for the workshop. Over to you, Hemlata ma'am.
Namaskar, everyone, and a warm good afternoon to everyone, each and every person who's present here. And it's my privilege to be here in this August gathering. And it's really a pertinent topic which we have organized today about the book reading, and which enhances our life skills and further enhances our personality. So, may I have this screen share, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am.
In the meantime, we'll just go on. So, reading is basically an interactive process between the reader and the text, which basically readers use their knowledge to build, to create, and to construct meaning. So, reading as a function, if we see psychologically, if we examine it as a process, it's a complex cognitive process of decoding symbols and to derive meaning from them. It is another form of understanding messages, cultures, someone's perspective, historical views, and developmental trends in all the spheres of human development and existence. So, reading has been there since time immemorial, and reading is very important aspect because it develops our thoughts, molds our thinking, develops creative thinking, instincts, make us understanding various perspectives and viewpoints across the world and understanding messages, cultures, someone's perspective, historical views and developmental trends in all the spheres of human development and existence. So reading has been there since time immemorial, and reading is very important. Is the recording going on? It develops our thoughts, problem. Molds our. Just a moment, sir. I don't know, some recording played out.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry, because I couldn't hear what I was speaking, so that is, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
for the-
Okay. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
So
Good.
basically, it's an important aspect of development, and it gives us opens our doors to knowledge, and it gives us lessons to our minds and to our life. So books are something which are very important, and these are the instrument to reading. So these are the objects which are uniquely designed, and they have the pieces of magic. No, I call them a piece of magic. They're the moving piece of magic which are present around us, and children who read them, they sound magical in their approach, in their lives. So, all of us who are present here seriously believe that something magical can happen when one reads a good book. And reading a book creates very, I mean, if you look at them, they are better off than the rest of their counterparts.
Hello, Aprajita. Yeah. Can we can we move on?
I think so. There seems to be a technical issue.
No problem. We can
Uh,
move on. That was very
yeah,
good exposition, and we got the idea about the very key importance and the cardinal principles of how personality development takes place through good book reading. I
absolutely.
think we will come back to maybe Himlata ma'am just at the summarization process. We will move ahead with our esteemed and very august resource person, Kumar Vikramji. Good afternoon, Vikramji. Most welcome to us, sir. This is NBT India and Expression
Good
India's
afternoon. Good
joint
afternoon.
effort, and you have been one of the, I would say,
Yes,
the
yes.
major torch bearers of this program, sir. Without your august presence, thinking, emotions, the entire Adolescent Summit would not have been possible, sir. Thank you so much. And none other than you are
We
the
do all
most
these things under
appropriate.
our.
You're the right person to flag off the first workshop of the entire series, sir. So I remember, sir, you've been a great motivator to all of us, even as grown-up adults. How book reading should never be left behind. The books should be in front of us, and that's how having racks in the library and having small libraries as creative friends forever are also a great motivation for every citizen in the country. And today we have the adolescents of India. So we call upon you to share your feelings and your intellect about your journey in terms of how young people remain the leaders of those little episodes of book reading in our culture, in our country, and in the empowerment of life itself. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nagpal, and thank you, Rekha Chauhanji and Aparita Dikshitji, and the entire team of Expressions India. This is a theme which is so much, so very close to me, not only individually, but to this great institution that we work in, the National Book Trust India, whose mandate is to inculcate a reading habit uh, in the society and to create a culture of reading, to create book mindedness. These are some of the very basic and a very integral, I would say, part of the constitution of National Book Trust India when it was founded in on 1st August 1957. And this our association with this International Adolescent Summit is all due to some
So
Sir, I think you are muted, or I think there is some technical glitch in between. I think so.
Sir is not mute. Sir is
My link also got broken in between.
hmm.
Uh, can we try once again for sir? You're able to hear us, sir?
Sir, are we audible to you?
I think there is something, not.
Sir is rejoining us. Sir just
Sir is
dropped
Yeah,
rejoining.
yeah,
out.
yeah. No
Till
problem.
Sir joins, let me finish how we were talking about reading as a function if examined psychologically. Then it is
Right,
actually a complex cognitive process of decoding symbols to derive meaning. This is what Himlata ma'am had just shared
right.
few minutes back,
Mm,
which is again very important for all of us to understand that if we are talking about books, then we also have to add on our emotion to it. And once our emotion is also added on, it becomes all the more beautiful. The books become all the more beautiful and understandable and comprehensible. So, anything else you want to add on to this, Himlata ma'am? And sir,
yeah. We
because
will, of
reading is
course.
yeah, reading is very, very, very important aspect because it develops our thoughts, our thinking, and then our creative instincts, making us understand the various plethora of viewpoints. So even when we say that it's, the knowledge comes with it, again, even with knowledge, the attitude, skills, and everything is inculcated through books. So starting right from the beginning.
I would
So
just
you
like
were saying something. I think in between there is something, some technical glitch again and again, coming up today. So I really, really uh, apologize on behalf of the whole team. So you were saying something you would like to add on to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
just mentioning there are Vikram sir is just joining. He had some connectivity issues as we all were listening in the morning. I think when we look at the research in our country, for
Right, sir.
example, when we talk of book reading, it's not just about short stories. It's about contemporary ideas, contemporary literature also, which actually becomes a motivation and also becomes a sense of direction to the young people. Now, if Ignited Minds and Wings of Fire, the soulful writings of our honorable past president APJ Abdul Kalam ji actually became a sort of a an ignition for the young people, a sort of a wing for flying high for the motivation. I think works like life skills manuals and training guidelines which are developed by the country, the CBSE has developed those. They need to reach out. Really need to reach out to almost all the schools in the country. Now, I remember when you talk about the thirsty crow, we talk about the clever rabbit. These are stories which might recall, which might rewind you to your kindergarten and your primary school days. But actually, they are fully applicable. They're fully applicable to the life today, even for a management graduate in the B school. Now, these are points where we forget that some of the short stories, whether it was The Room with a View, whether it was something which gave us a and sort of a view of life through the writings of Rudyard Kipling, and what Shakespeare used to constantly tell us through wide variety of his theatrical experiences. I remember Julius Caesar. You know how Julius Caesar actually became one of the major life skills turning points for learning, because here is a plot which actually talks about how friendship and a given point in time when turnabouts happen during even peer group interactions in historical review, and how that leads to a very a difficult plot where you start questioning the human relationships. Now these are lifelong learnings which are intergenerational, but we need to go back to them for maybe putting them onto the stage, putting them into elocution, putting them into oratory for eloquence. Then the translation, as what you're saying, of symbolic codes, and the codes which turn our language into speech and speech into day-to-day conation, the behaviors. That's so important. And the stimulation in the classroom for a pre-primary and a primary child, where the symbolic development of language, the phonemes and the morphemes and the semantics, and then we look at how the syntax formation turns into a speech with so much of emotions added to it. We need to give the opportunity for reading. That's where the today's workshop is actually meant to give a small skyline to the idea of
The,
book reading. It's not just about pick up a book and read it. So we have Kumar Vikram sir here once again in his unmistakable natural surroundings. I have seen sir writing
yes.
good books sitting in the park, and he's been a great author of children books in our country. Thank you so much, sir, for
I had to,
a very
yeah, I have to relocate myself and I have to come out in this open, in this lawn of our office. I hope it is a better
that's highly
surrounding.
motivating,
Sir,
sir.
it's a brilliant surrounding, sir. It's a brilliant surrounding.
Okay,
Absolutely
In fact,
going
yeah,
nature.
going with
let's,
Rabindranath Tagore's naturalistic, idealism. So
Go
I
ahead,
think this
sir.
is
Go ahead.
beautiful, sir.
we have to, let's restart. I had,
Yeah, yeah.
in the
Yes, sir.
morning, I was just thinking, we keep talking about the importance of reading and how it affects your personality and how it actually nurtures your mental well-being and your social behavior. But since it is supposed to be a book reading workshop, and it is generally said that uh, uh, think before read before you think. You know what does it mean? Read before you think. Of course, the first part of it is think before you speak. But even if you go deeper, it says that read before you think. Now, how does we of course we talk about all this, but it is very difficult to explain to a young kid that how this reading is going to serve him in the long run. So I thought that in this workshop right now, if we are calling it, since we are calling it a workshop, and it is said that if you are a reader, you live hundreds lives, and if you're not a reader, you just live one life, that is of yourself. But if you are a reader, through these books, through the characters and through the great personalities who are written about, you are able to get into their lives many a time, and that enhances your personality. So I have taken up some books from our trust only, and I would read a few excerpts, and these excerpts I'm suppose going to be interesting to the vast audience which is there, and just to emphasize and just to underline what it means when we say that you lead many lives if you are a reader. As they say, the taste of pudding is in eating it. So today I don't really want to be didactic. I don't really want to blurt out quotations about reading habit. I am not interested in just trying to emphasize the psychological or the sociological or the behavioral aspects of reading. I just want to concentrate on the act of reading, so that the kids get encouraged to build their own personal library. So the kids get encouraged to demand from their parents and from their teachers that if they really want to give them some kind of gifts, they should give them books as gifts. If it may also lead to some kind of a scenario in which most of the time we are asking the kids about their books, but it is also the time when the parents talk about the books which they like and which they read. The teachers talk about the books which they like and which they share among the kids. The first book which I have taken up is called Stories from Bapu's Life. So these are the anecdotes from Gandhiji's life, written by Uma Shankar Joshi, and the illustrations are by one of the topmost artists of India, Mickey Patel. And this book has sold somewhere around 2 million copies in various Indian languages during the last many years that it has been in existence. And this is the book that we have translated in Arabic, we have translated in Spanish, we have translated into French, we have translated into Chinese, and we have translated into Korean. And because this is really the one of the topmost bestsellers that we have brought out. And they are very simple stories from Gandhiji's life. And there's a one page story, and I think everybody would be able to connect, and you would be able to find something new also. It says, in South Africa, Gandhiji set up an ashram at Phoenix, where he started a school for children. Bapu had his own ideas about how children should be taught. He disliked the examination system. In his school, he wanted to teach the boys true knowledge, knowledge that would improve both their minds and their hearts. You may be knowing that Gandhi ji, apart from being the political and social reformer, he was a thorough educationist, and he came up with his own educational philosophy, which is called Nai Talim, and there he experimented with all these ideas at South Africa as well as his ashram in Ahmedabad. Gandhiji had his own way of judging students. All the students in the class were asked the same question, but often Gandhiji praised the boy with low marks and scolded the one who had high marks. So Gandhiji had this stranger, this teaching method. When a boy who was not able to answer well would be praised, would be appreciated, and the boy who was able to give the best answer and come up with high marks would be scolded. Now, what is the idea behind it? What is the philosophy? This puzzled the children. When questioned on this unusual practice, Bapu one day explained, I am not trying to show that Sham is cleverer than Ram, so I don't give marks on that basis. I want to see how far each boy has progressed, how far he has learned. If a clever student competes with a stupid one and begins to think no end of himself, he is likely to grow dull. Sure of his own cleverness, he will stop working. The boy who does his best and works hard will always do well, and so I praise him. Gandhiji kept a close watch on the boys who did well. Were they still working hard? What would they learn if their high marks filled them with conceit? Gandhiji continually stressed this to his students. If a boy who was not very clever worked hard and did well, Bapu was full of praise for him. I'm sure that Dr. Nagpal, as a senior psychiatrist, and all his associates from psychology, they can relate the kind of psychological, I would say, approach, the treatment which Gandhiji is having in this story, and uh, it's a something that you can encounter in a book only, because it is not every day you will find people who have seen Gandhi or who have known Gandhi, who can tell you about these stories. It can these stories can come to you only if you are in the habit of picking up a book and reading them through. So this is a story that I read out from the stories from Bapu's life. And just to underline the first the, the remark which I made, that you can lead hundreds lives if you are a reader. So right from Gandhiji, I go to an entirely different book, and this is called Dear Father. One of my objectives in this session is also to introduce our kids, or to familiarize them with the names, with the stalwarts of Indian literature, which they would not be knowing. I mean, we know about J.K. Rowling, or we know about others who come from the Western world or the English-speaking world, but we are not aware of the treasure which exists in the Indian literature, in the Indian language literature. So here I pick up another best-selling title, which is called Dear Father, and this is by Bhabendranath Sekia. Now, I have twin intention, a twin objective of talking about this book. One is to introduce this name Bhabendranath Sekia, and also to introduce to you the fact that Bhabendranath Sekia wrote in Assamia language, the language of Assam, but this is a book which is translated into English. So this is how the knowledge and the stories travel from one language, from one culture to another, and they get recorded in books, and they get expressed through books, and that is how we remain connected as readers, as social beings, as individuals with one part of globe, and from one part of globe to another. This is
So, a
a
very
fascinating.
important factor, uh, Vikram sir,
Yeah.
very instigating dialogue you've initiated with the audience, and I'm sure the youngsters are definitely in an introspective mood. What comes to our mind from a role model like you, who's been into great amount of literature for youngsters in our country? What did what did initiate you actually? How was your initiation into book reading as a youngster? I mean, what could have been a parameter from your family, from your school, that prompted you to go beyond the textbooks? You know, we all have read textbooks, and then children read textbooks in the classroom and they study for the exams, the subjects, and all. How do we look at life beyond the textbooks and also book reading as part of our, enrichment to life? Maybe you could take us on that small journey for a moment. Right, sir.
Well, I would say that I was fortunate enough because my father was professor in English, and that is not enough because you may be a educated person, or a professor, or engineer, or doctor, but you should also be having a worldview which allows you to set priorities in life, and he set his own priorities. So the books were at the top of the priorities. And as a young child of 3 years or 4 years, I would see the books in my father's book racks. And I had known the names like Keats and Shelley and Wordsworth, just like they're without understanding what they stand for. And I remember as a young kid, I always there was a big book on Shelley, and I would always pronounce it as Shally, and my father would always correct me with a smile that it is not Shally, it is Shelley. So he gradually, but there was no. I would also like to emphasize that there was no some kind of a some kind of a pressure to read books. This is very important. We turn everything into some kind of a assignment or a job, and then it loses its charm and its importance. So a very in a very I would say subtle and indirect way, the books would be given to us, and we would we were initiated into this. And mostly, summer vacations, when traveling out was not a very common thing, we would be reading books. We were reading the school, the magazines, and I remember from my childhood days, this magazine of the Parag and Bal Bharti and all that. And there are some of these stories which have remained with me, and I'm sure that is true of many other readers. So bit by bit, we were initiated into this habit of reading books, and habit of making friends with them, and not as a kind of a drudgery, or kind of a something that we must be done, or with some kind of some kind of instruction that I must read one book a month. Nothing like that, but in a very, I would say, very natural and in a very harmonious way.
One important factor, sir, as you're talking about the influences, we always look back, and I'm sure our future generation who is growing up as adolescents, and they are going to be leaders in the thinking process of a ever-changing nation. For example, if I remember correctly, Tolstoy influenced a little bit of thinking process as far as Mahatma Gandhi's own perceptions were concerned, and maybe Stuart Mill influenced Swami Vivekananda's maybe perceptions about certain things. Like this, can you tell us how certain books actually turn out to be great influences across the century? And maybe you can name us a few as a motivating factor for the audience. Some of the remarkable works of great people, of course, our father of the nation, Swami Vivekananda, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Rabindranath Tagore, and many other authors, of course, the folklore of India. They have been great masters, the great learning processes. We cannot have our libraries without the expositions of such great masters. So maybe a listing of few of those books, say 10 books which are uh, according to your best list of books for the youngsters in their book racks at home and the library in school, and maybe a little small note about those books. What has been the influencing factor? It'll be really worth to know it from you, sir.
Well, the question that you have put, it's a tall order, I mean, to pick up books which have influenced the thinkers, or which have influenced the societies, and there have been the different books which have influenced different societies, and when we talk about uh, in terms of book reading, I think mostly the new genre. That's why it is called novel. The new genre of novel that started in the Victorian period, in the English society, and also in other societies like for the French, for that matter. That entire genre of novel writing gradually impacted. If we talk about India, because of the colonial impact. So I would say the novels of starting even before the Victorian period, in the early early 19th century, late 18th century, starting with the books of Jane Austen, the Pride and Prejudice, and a TV serial was also made on that. Then that's the most famous novel of Jane Austen, and it's about some kind of a between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. There are two major characters who have this continuous some kind of a war of attrition going on between them before they ultimately fall in love, and ultimately they decide to marry. And I would say that these classics, there are some abridged versions also available. So the kids who are of 12 years or 14 years of age, they can very well start with abridged versions before they graduate to reading the main the actual text. And then we have writers, maybe like Thomas Hardy with his Mayor of Casterbury is supposed to be very, very influencing novel, and it's about opening up a new world where this chap called Henchard, he migrates from from London to America, and he encounters a new world. And there is this continuous struggle between what is old and what is new, and he's not able to sort of you know kind of reconcile with the modern and with the contemporary new ideas of doing business, which is there in the US. And even though he is successful, ultimately he meets a tragic end. And then uh, 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 these novelists over a period of time uh, when uh, when new educated middle class came up in India with its linkages in England, we started having our own literature, which in Bangla you have Bankim Chatterjee and Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay, and in Hindi later on you have Premchand, and I'm sure that the Premchand should always be on the list. And for the kids who want to read Premchand's book, they can also go for a collection that we have about the stories of Premchand for the young kids. The Tera Bal Kahani, the 13 stories for children. And one of the stories which they should be knowing, and they should be introduced to always, is of course the Premchand's Eidgah, which is a classic example of child the examination of child psychology, I would say, the expression of child psychology, where the this character called Hamid, who is hardly 11 or 12 years old, or maybe even younger, who goes who gets maybe 1 rupee or 2 rupee from his dadi to visit the 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 fair of Eid. And from there he buys a chimta for his dadi. And the dadi asks him when he comes back, what did you buy? And he says that मैंने आपके लिए चिमटा खरीदा है, क्योंकि मैं रोज देखता हूँ कि जब आप रोटी बनाती हैं तो आपके हाथ जो है वो जल जाते हैं, जलते रहते हैं, तो चिमटे से ये हाथ नहीं जलेंगे. तो ये this kind of value system, this kind of empathy that you receive from some of these books is something that every I would say every house and every society should be able to treasure. And I believe that all the parents and our teachers should be willing to you know uh, introduce these books to our kids. And then later, of course, you have if I say from the perspective of Hindi, you have other novels which for a grown up child like maybe 14 or 15 years, they can read Jashankar Prasad, and Agge, and later on they can get introduced to Krishna Sopti and Kamleshwar and Rajendra Yadav. Because I'm talking from Dr. Nagpal, I am
Yes, yes, I
deliberately in
Yes.
this session. I am deliberately talking about Indian
sure.
writers, and I'm talking about Indian literature, and and I because I think this is one of our important responsibilities, where
Absolutely, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
to introduce kids to the vast treasure of Indian literature which is there. And
In fact, sir,
I,
you are definitely giving us an indicator, and we all agree that I remember having studied in school across the country, in Kendra Vidyalayas, in many other government and convent schools. I remember the short stories from Assam, from Tamil Nadu, from Kerala, from Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Marathi literature. I think they've had impact on the entire ecosystem of our thinking itself, our thought process over the years. You look at how the beautiful exploration of cinema in the directorial ventures of Satyajit Ray from Bengal, and how it actually manifested so much of good literature in Bengali. So we are actually so fortunate, and that's the whole purpose of this particular adolescent summit, sir. And NBT India understands the flavor and the essence of diversity in language, in our in our communication skills with such a diversity of young people, adolescents in the future. It's about the emotion, not just the language, but the emotion of connectivity, which you are trying to tell us. Hemlata ji, you had
Yes, sir.
a
Yes,
question
sir.
to ask, sir. Please tell us. I mean, that was a very interesting part you were just discussing before the workshop. Could you mention to sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Vikram, sir, I have a question. Does traditional poetry have a significance in building blocks of a child's personality, especially during adolescence? So I just want to understand, I mean, how does it affect their
Poetry. You're talking about
yes, the
how
poetry, the traditional
specific.
poetry.
Maybe sir can tell us about the genesis of Indian poetry and its integration into the life of a child,
And
especially the
especially,
adolescent. Maybe sir can give us a
yes,
couple of
yes,
examples from his
yes,
experience,
in
or maybe we
relation
can
to
ask
adult.
Vikram sir what have been his favorite poems, and maybe one of them he can take a little couplet from those and tell us about the significance of life for the young people. Yes, sir.
See, by traditional poems, what do you mean by traditional poems? I would like to know. You mean to say our
Uh,
which are there in the in our Indian ethos, uh,
Yes,
yes, sir.
Indian,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir, yes,
And
sir.
many a times
maybe
Written by the
integrated
Indian authors and all.
into the curriculums also. Many
Yes,
times they are part of the curriculum, they are part of the learning in the classroom, uh, and not only just the authors you mentioned, the poets. Maybe it can be even poets from all over the world. I mean, like the whole idea about say
Rabin,
a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it passes into nothingness. I mean, what John Keats is trying to tell us, and how does that impact the growing mind, and how does it help us to define the beauty of the growing soul and
why not? I
connectivity with
mean,
the environment?
that is the beauty of great poetry. It is always universal. It is always relevant, whether we are quoting Keats or we are quoting Kabir or we are quoting Mirabai or we are quoting Vidyapati. You know, uh, what happens is that the general collective wisdom of humanity is always is always relevant, and the way it connects one human being with another, one society with another, and the way it enlarges and encompasses various kinds of experiences. I think it is always relevant if we are talking about the great poets of the I mean why even the Kabira and even the poetry which you find in Vedas or Upanishads, they are still being utilized and still being being inspirational. And in fact, sometime back, we had done one theme on environment, and there we found that from Yajurveda, the Shanti mantra of Yajurveda, with Vanaspati Santi and Antariksha Santi. I mean, those things are still very, these are not the pearls of wisdom which will lose their relevance in any case. The only thing is that how we approach and how we utilize in our life and how we pass on to the next generation. That is the most challenging thing to do. And there the role of the family, the role of I would say a family sitting together and reading together. There is a saying that the family which eats together stays together, but I would say the family which reads together stays even stronger. you know because it is not that it is not some kind of a outsourcing of the reading habit among the young generation, that they should be reading. It is not a kind of responsibility which only the young people have to shoulder. It is the collective responsibility. Yeah, I mean, there can be evening sessions when everybody sits together, and maybe the father reads and everybody listens, and maybe the sometime on a weekly basis maybe a child reads and everybody listens. So this is a kind of a kind of a habit and kind of a value system related to reading together, that has to be inculcated. And even 2 days back, I was emphasizing on it, that the proportion of the income, I mean, which we spend on buying books, is generally very, very low. I mean, we can think of downsizing some of our other expenses, and we can think of uh, you know taking the share of books even further, and on that line.
Okay. That's absolutely well taken, sir. Because I think more important is how the with the changing socio dynamics and the 21st century skills as a requirement. Do you recommend any upcoming maybe publications in the market and even by NBT India, looking at the 21st century need? We know that self-regulation, self-management, looking at a better critical analysis of our own selves vis-a-vis emotions, the technological skills. These are all the 21st century demands on the youngsters also, with the impact of social media, the discretionary attitude towards media, the social media literacy. What kind of literature would be motivating so that one does not become maybe addicted or subjugated to the idea of social media? Now, that's a huge challenge for the entire country. We find a lot of growing, internet addiction. We find a lot of cyber addiction coming up, cyber habituations coming up. For the good, of course, we know that technology is a great boon. It is going to connect the entire world and the nation, and today online education is a great boon. But on the flip side, we also come across the side effects of that, the adversities also. There is cyber violation, there is cyber bullying. But in that case, what can be more inviting to divert, to come into a natural, spontaneous book reading, which helps people to get more attracted to books? This is also a great opportunity. I remember Yuvrajji mentioning in the inaugural and also the workshop how young authors can start giving us more ideas. This is also a platform, and we are recommending, we are suggesting to the audience, the adolescents all over the country, to write down maybe a page or a two. Please do that. And here is where Vikramji is also motivating us. I request all the teachers and their participating students at least to give a thought to a new idea about some topic, some story, any storytelling which you can put it on maybe 2 paragraphs and send it to us on the email, a new story. So be a young author for the changing world. That is the principle. Be a young author. जिसको कहते हैं एक बाल अध्यापक हैं आप एक बाल अध्यापक हैं, बाल मनोवैज्ञानिक हैं, एक बाल जीवन कौशल शिक्षक हैं. You are a child, you are a peer educator. So please be a good author. Forget about good author, be an author. Whatever comes to your mind and thoughts, put it in 2 paragraphs. Maybe a story you came across, maybe any story you came across. You saw somebody on the road and you tried to help, or you saw somebody else helping. That's a story, isn't it? So your in your personal growth, in your peer growth, in your interaction in the classroom, on the games field, in the auditorium, any anecdote you remember, any incident you remember that helped you change yourself, and that's a story of life. Each one of us has many stories. So can you do that? Now, Prajita, what do you think about this?
Absolutely, sir. And in addition to what you said, I would really, really like to add, I think getting a perspective of Sri Kumar Vikram sir would be really useful for all of us. Sir, as we are all aware that it's a digital, space, and everybody loves to even read books on Kindle and, have it on their phone, respective phones. So even if they're going to the vacation or anywhere, they just like to click on the particular PDF file and they read the entire book.
Right.
Sometimes, especially as a child psychologist, I would like to add, we realize that there's a too much of reading of books happen on phone, on internet. So sir, here, according to your perspective, according to your vast experience, what would you like to guide to the students, especially the young adolescents who are really, really tech savvy and would love to read books on the phone? There has to be a certain level of balance that we all need to make, even when it comes to reading books. So anything, sir, that you would like to add here, Vikram, sir?
Oh, nothing
and
new
also
to add.
motivate them to become young
Mod
authors.
moderation in life and moderation in whatever we do is the basic requirement. And this is what 2,500 years ago Buddha came up with, the middle path, the madhyam marg. So madhyam marg in everything that we do, leaving out the extremities. So even if you sometimes what happens, I find that a child gets hooked onto reading so much that he's always carrying a book, and even if he's going to his relatives or to some friends, he's always carrying, and he will find a corner for himself, and he would not interact or associate with other people, and he will still be reading. Even that is not something which is desirable. So uh, balancing out is something which is always needed. And as far as the issue of child authors, I would like to say one or two things before you actually start writing. Is that one or two things that you can do to get into the writing mold is to, when you read something, when you read a story or any other book, try to write a summary in your own words. So if it is a novel of it's a story of 50 pages or 70 pages, just find time to write it's a story or its summary in your own words in, say, 2 pages or 4 pages or 5 pages, and that would show how much what you have understood, what is your interpretation. And that is one. And number two, which I also I recommend, maybe for the kids who are of 10, 12, or 14 years, is to, they can also create some kind of drawing or of some situations, or some dialogues, or some characters of the stories that they read. So that kind of exercise always stays with you, the story stays with you, and you are able to carry it throughout your life. Of course,
Absolutely.
writing is something it is one of the most important ways to express yourself. And the best thing would be, and to not only write about your observations, but also sometimes what happens, there are a lot of things that we are not able to share or express. So you can create your own diaries, and you can write about that. Sometimes you can even write, if you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling up to, you can maintain a diary that today, it was not a good day for me, and you can create a story out of it, so that there is this some kind of a emotional catharsis going on. And that helps you as a human being also, and that also gives you the resources to write about. And that can stay you on a good course to become a writer, I suppose.
It's a beautiful form of expression, sir, and at the same time, very rightly said by you that it leads to catharsis. According to the practice that we have, professional practice, it's a basic way of letting specifically children and even young adults, for that matter, to know that, whenever you feel that there's something that's, going around in your thoughts, in your mind, and you really wish to express, and you do not have anybody around you, you have a paper, you have a pen, you surely have someone to do. So this, I think, is a very, very valid point, sir. Anything that probably Hemlata ma'am, that you would want to add here, you would want to probably ask a particular question to sir. Over to you, Hemlata ma'am.
Hello.
Rajita,
Yeah, yeah. I
okay, she's there. She's there.
Sir, I think I lost a link in between, ma'am. Did you?
So, ma'am, anything that you wish to ask, sir, or you wish to add here? We were talking about writing is a beautiful form of expression,
Yes, yes,
and
yes,
it
yes,
really leads to catharsis. So, anything from a psychological viewpoint that you wish to add, or maybe
yes,
ask
yes.
something to sir?
Definitely. I would like to rather add here. Sir has been very holistic in his words and his views, and it has really enriched us. And I would like to say that, right, like they say, reading is to mind, and reading is to mind, and what exercise is to the body. So reading has always been very good and pertinent and very significant in terms of mental health. Like it makes us more empathetic human being, and it makes us very useful person. If we are reading, we understand certain perspectives. It enhances our creativity, helps us in imagery, and also makes us more imaginative person, who can foresee situations under stressful situations too. And then it also helps us to relax. It makes us more enjoyable person who just lives in the moment, mindful at times, and therefore understanding the situations and taking decisions, making more correct choices, and thus also helps in decreasing the depressive thoughts and moods. And also it helps us, for the students I'm telling, it helps in memory and attention. It helps you focusing better because you're sitting and reading in a quietly in a place. Then of course your thoughts are together, you are concentrating, you're using your cognitive abilities, so you definitely have better focus and memory in rather than the people who don't read. So, and it also helps rejuvenating yourself, and it also exercises your brain muscles, which is again you're using your all the senses, you are completely involved in gross thought process works. And then of course it's a very beautiful thing which brightens up our life, and it clears up our perspectives, our prejudices, our thoughts which we carry, and it makes our feelings more positive and changes lives too. So, reading is something which is very close to all of us, and without reading, we are not learning and
Incomplete.
moving further. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Hemlata ma'am. Sir, there's something that I really wish to ask you. Um, Reading is, of course, somewhere a solitary activity.
Hmm.
We are aware of this. It's a solitary activity. It takes you to a different world, different imaginative world, and you really love the symbolic representation of your own life experience somewhere being, expressed in the form of books, in the form of writing. Sir, how do you feel that parents can be a big support in being a part of the book reading phenomena? So like maybe having a group session where the parents are narrating the stories, or where they're being part of the stories, or sometimes they're enacting these stories for that matter for children. What would you, sir, like to say from your experience, book reading through parents, by parents, how successful it is in these days, and how is your experience on that, sir?
No, if parents don't do, then who will do? I mean, it's a very basic, because they have parents have to be readers first, and then only kids can be the readers. There is no two way about it. And uh, so that also means that the parents have to have this kind of a conscious decisions that they have to take, that when they go out in the market, they must visit a bookshop, with the kids. Allow the kids to just see, just have a look at the vast expanse of books which are lined up there. And it is not necessary that every time when you go you need to buy a book, but even that the ambience of standing in a bookshop is something that is a habit that you would be giving a kind of a lifelong learning to the kid. And if you are not doing, you are really denying the child a very powerful and a very beautiful world. And you are actually, I would say, failing as a parent, because you there is a your kid can do without a lesser number of pairs of shoes, and or he or she can do without with less numbers of maybe sweaters or shirts or other fancy things. But if you are denying the right to read of the kids, then you are really denying a very important aspect of life, which cannot be compensated. Because what you read as a child, it for that matter, whatever you do as a child, it stays with you. And that creates the persona that you would become. You become what you read, frankly speaking, and you don't become what you don't read. So, I mean, there is no two way about it, and it doesn't mean that the parents have to be readers in that sense that every day they are reading. And I know that, as I just we have just said that moderation is important, and it is just uh, uh, being with the kid when they are reading, and you can read aloud. You can read one chapter, the kid can read aloud the next chapter. I mean, there are various combinations and combinations which can be made. So this is the most important. I mean, if the family is not doing, then the kid is really uh, on a tricky track.
True, sir. I really feel when you say that. Um, Sir, as we are aware that there are almost around 1,000 plus adolescent peer educators who's watching this and who's being part of this book reading session. When we talk about peer educators, sir, there are few skills, there are few level of competency that we really expect them to have to, make difference in in other people's life, in other their classmates' life, juniors, seniors, for that matter, everyone in the community. Peer educators need to have skills like leadership, need to have effective communication skills, need to have a somewhere a negotiating, a convincing skills, being very empathetic at the same time. Sir, any book specifically for the adolescent age group that you would like to share, that you must, maybe you must not miss reading this particular book, it will really help you enrich a lot of values. So any books that would you like to
See,
quote maybe?
one book, I would not recommend one book because that won't be a done thing. Today I have brought many books for the adolescents, which would be interesting for them. Like, this is a book, Children Who Made It Big. This is from us. This is about the profiles about, say, Nani Palkhiwala, Satish Gujral, Leela Seth, Rahul Bajaj, Vishwanathan Anand, Yashpal, Amjad Ali Khan, Mrinali Sarabhai, Ruskin Bond, M.S. Swaminathan, Sai Paranjpe. This is just one book which carries profiles of 11 eminent personalities, and generally talking about their childhood. I would read one paragraph from this chapter on Ruskin Bond, and that would be, I suppose, some kind of that will create us uh, interest.
Absolutely, sir.
The Lonely Muse. It's a true story from Ruskin Bond's life. Daddy, shall we look at your stamp collection? Asked Ruskin. He was sitting on a steel trunk inside the raft tent which he shared with his father. He loved all those exotic and beautiful stamps, but better than even looking at them, he loved the stories his father told about the picture in the stamp, or about the country to which it belonged. Sometimes he told him about how he had managed to get a particularly rare stamp. It all sounded like a great adventure to the 10-year-old. One day, Mr. Bond was busy. That Ruskin Bond's father. One day, Mr. Bond was busy. Not just now, Ruskin. Let me complete this poem, and then we will organize the stamps, shall we? Ruskin loved his father's handwriting as much as his poems. Oh, Daddy, will you read your poem to me after you finish writing it? Asked Ruskin. His father nodded. Ruskin got up and wandered in the grounds of the camp. His father worked for the RAF, Royal Air Force of Britain, and had got a special permission to keep his son with him. As a result, Ruskin wasn't able to attend school. Not that he minded it. Being with his father Being with his daddy was better than the excitement of school any day. Why? He is the best daddy any boy could wish for, thought Ruskin with pride. Of course, there were times when he missed his mother and wished she were staying with them. She had separated from his father when Ruskin had been about 8. But his father more than made up for her absence. He was still wandering on the grounds when his father came out. Shall we go out? He asked Ruskin. The boy gladly agreed because he loved these outings with his father when they walked through the market, looked at the shop windows, and sometimes went for a movie. The poem could wait till they got back. That day, father took Ruskin to a bookshop. Daddy, could you buy me a book, please? He asked. His father smiled. Of course, Ruskin, but today I'm going to buy you something else too. He picked up a bound notebook. This is a diary. I want you to start recording the day's events at the end of each day so that you would know how you have spent your time and what you have done. Maybe you could write how you feel about events that happened during that day. It would be like a journal. Then he bought Ruskin a couple of books, one of which was David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. So it is very interesting that when we were talking about reading and how parents can initiate and how you can start writing in their diaries, Pat comes this uh, this excerpt from this book where we are actually talking about all these things. So you can see how his father would have initiated Ruskin Bond into the world of books, into the world of writing, and in a very natural and in a very I would say in a harmonious way, without it being some kind of a pressure on him, but us with some understated expectations, I would say.
Thank you so much, sir. You know, the way you are standing right now with these, so many books, basically, it is actually fascinating me. Every time I see people with a lot of books somewhere, it makes me feel which, what are the names of these books? I want to know. And the way you have read this excerpt and you have mentioned how great responsibility is on the shoulders of every parent, because when we as a parent expect our children to read and study and comprehend, we basically do not understand what was the responsibility right from day one, because these children, they observe every single move a parent makes. Here, the way you have mentioned about Ruskin's father, how beautifully he inculcated this reading habit in the child, and also writing. I remember right in the beginning when Dr. Nagpal sir was talking about importance of book reading, I just mentioned the same thing, and now I remember how beautifully my father did the same thing with me when he used to take us to the market, and when we used to look at the books around. He never questioned me that why I was buying a book. He would simply buy it for me. And I was very young, and I used to ask for comics. I used to ask for books which were like not even matching to my age. And then he used to tell me, would you be able to read this? And I said yes. He used to just buy it for me. And exactly same way, in the he was in army. When he used to come back from office, he used to tell me, okay, now you've read it, let me know what you read today, and if you remember anything, write it. So he used to always see what I used to write. This is how gradually we, uh, you know, basically inculcated this reading habit, as well as writing, and then comprehension, the interpretation of what we are reading. So this is something I think every parent is recommended to do, and somewhere it's very important for even the school leaders, even the class teachers, when they are mother teachers, how beautifully they can gradually inculcate this kind of habit. So one more thing which previously you mentioned, sir, that these life skills which needs to be uh, inculcated in every young adolescent, those 10 life skills, self awareness, I think, could be beautifully inculcated through books.
Hmm.
Any particular comment from your side on that? Because self realizations, beautifully, day before yesterday when I attended one more workshop, you read some excerpts from that book, and some realization came in, in myself, that we cannot kiss our own face. How important it is to realize the value of relationships and express our love. So any comments from your side on that realization part, sir?
Yes, I of course this is most obvious. It is supposed, uh, once upon a time there was a seminar, and we were the eminent Hindi novelist, scriptwriter uh, Kamleshwar. He was speaking, and he made a remark, and that has stayed with me. And he made a remark saying कि जब आप साहित्य पढ़ते हैं तो आप अंदर ही अंदर एक अदृश्य तरह से एक अच्छे इंसान बनते जाते हैं. Now, of course, there would always be counter arguments saying that so and so seems to be such a learned person, a literature, and he's not a good person. That's not the thing. The thing is that the this is the basic basic I would say objective which reading is supposed to fulfill for us. I would also like to emphasize at this point of time, Dr. Nagpal and your team, and that you know one shouldn't think that when we are talking about reading habit, it is all about it's only some kind of a romantic or some kind of a social or some kind of a cultural. It has only cultural or social implications. For a nation, it has economic value as well. Came across a very fascinating speech by Mr. Barack Obama when he was just a senator. He was not the prime minister, president of US at the time. I will share that speech, and I also wrote about that speech, which he made before the Association of American Libraries, where he talks about the fact that how reading, a good reading habit creates a a good resourceful human, human resources for the country. Somebody, if the human resources have been fed well on reading, they come up to contribute economically to the society, to the nation, in a more cohesive, in a more impactful way. Because otherwise, if the youngsters have not been brought up on reading values, they would also be not good enough for good employments. They would not be good enough for innovations. They will not be good enough for taking up leadership roles in the society. So we should not think, or as we have been we generally emphasize on the fact that the reading will make you a better human being, or and you will be a more sociable, and you would be better at relationships and all that. Of course that is important, but at the same time, for
Yes.
those who fancy about the practical aspects of any endeavor, if for that matter, even intellectual endeavor, I know there are people, there would be groups of people who would ask what is the use of poetry, and what is the use of literature, and what is the use of reading. These people and these communities and these groups should also know that the reading and the intellectual exercise comes up in a comes back to the society in a way that the society becomes more progressive, and it creates leaders in all walks of lives.
So very beautifully answered, sir. And I also have a question here. As you mentioned in a few minutes back about Vedas, so I would like to ask if we have something coming out, some book which amalgamates the essence of all the Vedas we have, or something which is already there with NBT, which we do not know. Because I feel Vedas have most of the things which have been captured beautifully, and the whole world is looking at us as mother of learning when it comes to Vedas. They are researching and they are reading it in a big way. So, do we have something to be offered to our uh, children as such,
If
especially adolescents?
if they start creating a library only of Veda books, I think there would be no end to it. Vedas, I mean, the
Some
hundreds and
excerpts,
thousands of books
probably.
have been,
Yeah.
yeah, but we have uh, a book on I would say immortal books, पुस्तकें जो अमर हैं. There, these books have been referred to, and I think it your suggestion is well taken, and we can think of working upon on a suitable compilation of some of the Vedic hymns and hymns from Upanishads
Missions.
for the youngsters, with explanations and with basic introductions. It's a good idea. Yes, no doubt.
Yeah, because we
Also,
have many books. Sorry,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. No,
Because
go
we have
ahead.
many.
Vikram sir, again, because coming back to the goals and the essence of the Adolescent Summit, now we all know that more than about 15,000 adolescents have registered and are part of the journey of evolving this into a more continuous dialogue across the country in the times to come. And I think as a flagship discourse from your side, it has been an immense amount of idea, I would say, a new thought about bringing in the reading as a bridge, as a connection between the family itself and the family school partnership. The reading beyond the textbooks, reading beyond the textbooks, and also looking at certain self help classics which have been written across the world in the last century and even in the 21st century. What Hemlata ji is just talking, it came to my mind. Maybe the request to the National Book Trust would be part of the ideas coming from the youngsters, amalgamating some of the literature that influences the development of young people's horizons of skills from the Western as well as the Indian, and in a abstract form, maybe a few lines about each such book, maybe 10 Western books and 10 Indian books, and they come together in a single review, which talks about life skills development. For example, we look at Howard Gardner, we look at Daniel Goleman, we look at Rabindranath Tagore, we look at Mahatma Gandhi, and all were immensely deep into developing the youth of the nation, and nothing less than, of course, our great role model Swami Vivekananda. So I'm just looking at a suggestion, because you are the role model leader in publication house of the government of India. So what's your opinion on that, sir? Amalgamating some of the classics which can be of use to young people.
Well, I would. Uh, it's very interesting. Our director our director Shri Yuvraj Malik has been very keen on one particular book, and we are working on it. It's to come out with a compilation of anecdotes related to all these
Yes.
personalities, and
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
working on that. So anecdotes is one part of it, and then of course we can also think about having some kind of book on classic books. Some summaries and some summarized
Summaries
versions.
of the classic books.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
these are
like
good
the key
ideas. Yes.
message. How these
Yeah.
books have given us a key message to the life and the development. For example,
Yes.
again, I repeat, The Wings of Fire by Abdul Kalam ji told us about, the infinite potential of young people in India. It spoke about the creative instinct, the leadership, and the potential life skills in every child, where no child is left behind and every child moves forward with empowerment. I think the International Adolescent Summit is based on those basic principles of being aware, responsible, and empowered. Something like that. That we have a paragraph of the message in those classics amalgamated into one volume. Yeah,
Yes,
it'll be great amount of support.
yes, we can do that as a kind of corollary to what the book and anecdotes that we are doing.
And also coming back to, you gave a very simple motivation to how young authors can start generating their ideas and send it to us on the email. A few of their anecdotes about their own life and any story that they've heard which had a remarkable impact on them, from the grandparents, from the people around them, their peer group. What I want to ask you is, um that there is often this apprehension that somebody who has to write a story or be a a author, to begin by being an author, it is a tough job because you need to have a mastery on the language, on the vocabulary. Is it so? I mean, I feel, sir, emotions are more important than the language and the words to become an author. I mean, you had told us about yourself, how that emotion actually transformed you to just pen down the natural spontaneous feelings, and that made you a wonderful author. So to
You know,
make it
I
simple
would
for our young, yes, sir, yes, sir,
I would here I'm reminded of the great uh, American poet who also received Nobel Prize of T.S. Eliot. And T.S.
yeah,
Eliot is actually he was the pioneers of modernist poetry, and the modern poets actually uh, consciously they went for very difficult and obscure poetry. Their agenda was to dislocate meaning in their words, so that the reader has to make some kind of effort to understand the meaning. And even he said that of and so what he insisted was that poetry is not an art, it is a craft, where you have to be very sure about what word you are using. And uh, and uh, but even he said that, but what a poet starts with is his emotion. So if, as long as you don't have the emotional resources, you don't have a special idea or a special story to share, you won't be able to write, even if your language is very good, and if even if your vocabulary is very good. Because ultimately the main thing is the is the inner quality of the content. What is that is provoking you to write? What is that is provoking you to sort of unburden yourself through written words? So that has to be there first. Then the vocabulary and language and all that can be taken care of, and oh and of course gradually you would be also able to master your diction, and you master your verbs and master your commas and punctuation marks. But it is the main thing is that what is that which is troubling you? What is that is making you restless? What is that makes you reach out for a paper or a pencil or maybe a computer keyboard to express yourself? That is very important. That is the main thing.
okay, wonderful. And also, it takes away a huge amount of energy by trying to collate what people tell us and what we want to write on our own. I think the whole essence of this journey in the next few days would be to help the youngsters open up their emotions to some creative instincts within the family, because you are at home most of the time. The schools are not have not yet opened up. So involving parents, as Rekha ji was saying, involving the peer group and coming out with ideas which can be translated into a sort of a workable, actionable skill. That is what we are desiring, and I'm sure you're suggesting that. Um Also, feel, sir, that a lot of literature. You mentioned about very few pages having a huge impact. In the previous dialogue we had during the plenary workshop, very few pages, say 50 pages, become a remarkable turnabout in life. What did you mean by that? A very short story that can be more impacting than a huge encyclopedia. What does it mean to you? And can you give us a couple of examples of a very simple story that actually could be transformatory for the young people who are growing in a very complex world? We have a very complex world, both in terms of psychodynamics and sociodynamics, and also the type of family rearing habits for young people, the personal family, and the world outside. So, anything that helps us by a simple literature and a simple, book which has few pages but is transformatory in nature. Could you suggest one or two of them? Yeah,
You know,
from your experience of reading.
yeah,
Yeah.
one story which I shared, which has really impacted me and which has impacted the generations of children and readers, is that Premchand's Eidgah, which I shared.
So, so
And
right.
of course, I would like to recommend Leo Tolstoy's the Three Questions. And I
Yeah.
do not want
Yes,
to
sir.
narrate his story, but I would really encourage our youngsters and adolescents who are listening to this program, and to the teachers and the principals, that let us find out that story, which runs into maybe 5 or 7 pages of Leo Tolstoy, and which gives us the message about what is the most important work of life, what is the most important time, and who is the most important person. There are some three questions which are put there, and through a story, and through a very commonplace story, and through a very commonplace incident, you come to know the answers to these really philosophical questions. And I will recommend that story for everybody.
Okay. Uh, do you think something similar to Tolstoy also has a bearing in, the earlier books by Charles Dickens and even the Arthur Conan Doyle? Are they similar? Because we remember, and even now, I come across a lot of middle teenage population who are very fond of the traditional Arthur Conan Doyle and Charles Dickens, and how these are. Already mentioned about Jane Austen. Something similar in the Western literature that has an impact on whatever could be the
No,
original folklore of
when we are
India.
talking about Charles Dickens, he is
Yeah.
known to create the most the most I would say powerful adolescent
Right. Right, sir. Right.
protagonists, and
Yeah.
two novels. And if you are not, because these are big novels, if you are not able to read these novels in full, you must read them in the abridged version. You must at least read their story. The one is, of course, David Copperfield, and another is Oliver Twist. These
Yeah.
two
Yes, sir.
novels, and these are about the young characters. And Arthur Conan Doyle is a different take. Actually, he created Sherlock Holmes, and then his comrade, Dr. Watson. So everybody knows about the basic nature and structure of Sherlock Holmes stories of this detective nature, and that's a different kind of story, I suppose. But if we have to take somebody, some kind of equivalent to Tolstoy, and then naturally Charles
Yeah.
Dickens, these two novels would be highly recommended.
Sir, in the context of the Indian folklore and connecting us to our own earthliness, I think the first name that comes to mind is R.K. Narayan and maybe Ruskin Bond. So, what do you see as a similarity between these two great authors? There are many more, of course, not to just mention two, but that comes to my mind immediately because whenever we have these peer educators workshops, a lot of children happen to quote some of the ideas mentioned in the stories by these two authors. From your experience and feedback from the entire country, what do you see as a commonality between the messages in the books of Ruskin Bond and R.K. Narayan, and how does it take us to the roots and helps us to continue with the wings also, the fly the wings and get to the roots also. Both these authors, they've got a wonderful way to connect with the young people in schools. Yeah.
See, it is very interesting to note that R.K. Narayan, of course, is a senior counterpart, and Ruskin Bond came a bit later. But it is very
So
interesting that the most common uh, the element which would link both these writers is that both of them created some kind of a imaginary cities and islands, Malguri and in Ruskin Bonds, all this mountainous region in and around Missouri, and it's the characters uh, have their own. I would say they are placed in a in their own romantic setup, and where the young characters like Rusty or Swami, uh, through their own eyes, through the prism of their eyes, through their actions and behaviors, the outer world, the world at large is seen. So, in that context, I think both writers have done a tremendous, achievement, literary achievement, and it is not a it is not some kind of an uh, outsider view, but it is from the child-centric view which is happening in these stories. And I think and that is why these stories have been very, very popular among the youngsters as well as among the adults. In fact, to tell you frankly, it is generally said that, in fact, there was uh, this American poet uh, and critic C.S. Lewis, who wrote about all this that Narnia, that series. Uh, so he said that if the stories are good only for children, not for for the adults, then they are certainly not going to be great stories for children. So the stories which are good for children would be good for the adult reader as well. And that is the achievement of any classic children's story book, whether we talk about Panchatantra or Aesop's Fables, or we talk about Gulliver's Travels, or we talk about Ark and Narayan or Ruskin Bond or the stories of Premchand.
absolutely, and that is why the whole idea about amalgamating the literature from various resources and bringing them together for the benefit of our youngsters. I also feel, sir, that contemporary books which are not just about fiction or maybe lot of documents which talk about making a mark for leadership in young people. Simple. What are sustainable development goals? I'm so delighted and enlightened to see during the lockdown period, also during COVID-19, how the influence of certain documentations for the future world to come, the world waiting to be born, and how the Millennium Development Goals transformed into Sustainable Development Goals. And the young people in schools have conducted webinars incorporating these as ideas for the future. For example, alleviation of poverty, the gender sensitization, working towards destigmatizing mental health. Now, these are all out of the 17 goals of the world waiting for tomorrow. It's so heartening to see that they've actually probed into policies and practices and come out with amalgamating some of the elements of the new education policy also, where socio-emotional development, development of life skills has been given so much of importance. Do you also feel, as a member of so many government bodies, that our youngsters can be apprised, or they should be familiar with certain even policy documents which actually have relevance for their own life for tomorrow? Do you recommend any of those, or what are the elements of the new education policy where you would like to apprise the youngsters and our teachers also, which have relevance to holism, overall human development, rather than only literacy and education. It's about human development. Should
I
the
think
youngsters be familiar? Yes, sir.
in the new education policy, the most I would say revolutionary thing which has been introduced and which has been proposed is some kind of importance and the priority which is being given to education through a mother tongue and local languages till standard 5 and possibly also till standard 8, because this is one aspect where we have really lagged behind, and that has created so many complexities, social and cultural and political, and I would say even economic complexities, and some kind of individuals not being exposed to their um, uh, cultural ethos, to their linguistic ethos, I would say. And this is one important major step which has been
So, yeah,
taken, and I'm sure that this is going to be an important thing. And secondly, for the youngsters who are there of 8 years or 10 years or 12 years or 14 years, they are really very fortunate that when they grow up and when they go to take up college studies, they would be having option of having multidisciplinary choices. So if this has been one of the, I would say, one of the major I would say reasons of creating discord in family and in society and among the individuals, that where if you want to study if you want to study mathematics and you also want to study English literature, when you come to the college level, you don't have any option. You have to choose either or. But now the new education policies says that if you want to study music, if you want to study mathematics, and if you want to study physics, you can take all three together and study that. That is a kind of a great, I would say, a stress buster. It's going to be a great, not only a stress buster, but also going to produce generation which will likely to have a more holistic view of things than maybe we are having been brought up on a certain different kind of education
absolutely.
ethos. And of
Because,
course
yes, sir.
at the school level there are issues, where the new things which have been introduced which would do well is like art integrated studies, and then you have sports integrated studies, then you have emphasis on artificial intelligence, and I think these are the issues which would really impact the new learners. And I'm sure in the next 5 years and 10 years, we would be having individuals with learning capabilities and learning resources quite very different from us. And I'm sure that difference would be for better. And talking about the you said that whether we should be giving the policy documents or not, I think policy documents may not be that important. Rather than we should be talking about the fundamental changes which will happen
Yeah, yeah,
in the literature
of course. Yeah,
for children and the literature for the youngsters. There was a time 10 years back or 20 years back when it was not found comfortable or to introduce the themes of, say, death in the family, or to introduce the themes of separation, or to introduce the themes of children growing up in a split family, introduce the themes of violence at family. And uh, am I audible?
yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfectly all right.
Okay, so these are the new areas which have emerged, where I'm sure um, uh, the the psychiatrists like you and the psychologists, they can chip in and they can introduce new content for the kids, where all these things are dealt with in a very I would say subtle and understated manner, and that can, because this is already something which is happening abroad, where the kids having say issues like maybe ADHD or kids with some other issues, but you don't bring out stories so very directly. And maybe why Raju doesn't sit still, you know, and that
Right.
you can create a story around it, and in a very funny way, in a very interesting way. A story related to some dyslexia, a child suffering from with dyslexia, not suffering, child with dyslexia, and maybe some interesting and funny way, so that such protagonists feel confident that the stories are being written about them, and the other readers and other peers and other stakeholders also get introduced to these kind of unique personalities.
Absolutely, sir. I think that's a very fine way to send the message across, that we all need to be familiar with the fact that the spirit of inquiry in young people is a huge amount of a facility our new education policy is offering. A constant stimulation to ask questions about answers by the people around us, and also even a child in the primary school, the foundation years of life, the early childhood education, with a lot of play methods involved, that can actually allow complete sensory, motor, emotional, and intellectual development, becomes the onus of the school and the family together as a partnership. So the new education policy is actually a huge amount of empowering moment, a sort of a roller coaster ahead for the society to give the baton in the hands of the young growing mind. And that's where our youngsters need to be allowed to, or given the platform to come forward, to talk, to share, to express their ideas. And that was the genesis of this adolescent summit, the ninth international summit, where a large number of young people have come forward to maybe even look at the next 15-20 days to share their opinions. Lastly, sir, unless, of course, I request Hemlata ji, Rekha ji, or Prajita ma'am, if you have any distinct thought to share with Vikram ji in terms of getting his response to it. Any one of you? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're absolutely audible. Um,
Yeah.
it has been
Hmm.
really, really a nice experience, this 2 hours journey that we have had with Sir, listening to the anecdotes, listening to the book examples, and the real life skills that we were talking about throughout the process of book reading webinar. So there's one thing that I'm really looking forward to ask you, and I would really like to know your perspective. Since it's little sensitive, so I'll be very cautious with my word. So when we talk about Bhagavad Gita, when we talk about some religious books also, keeping all the religion, in our mind, all religion, Islam, every religion in our mind. So what do you feel that, certain books like Bhagavad Gita have life skills in themselves? When you read it, you really imbibe those life skills. So something, sir, that you would like to talk about it? Ending it with this will really touch a lot of souls, sir, here.
I can surely, Bhagavad Gita has been a source of inspiration and motivation, and it has enlivened the depressing and dark days of generations of people, and there is no doubt about it. In fact, when we were talking about some of the ancient texts which might have got some references related to the I would say counseling or some kind of a psychological understanding of characters and situations. I and Dr. Nagpal were in this conversation, and where we did discuss that isn't Lord Krishna a great counselor, because when Arjuna says that he cannot, he cannot fight this battle, and he almost he surrenders, and he's on a he's on a he's he's completely in awe of the situation, and he requires psychological counseling of Lord Krishna,
Yep.
and that is what Bhagavad Gita is. In fact, we also discussed how in Ramayana there is this a reference to, I think we had discussed earlier also about this Hanuman Vismriti, where when Hanumana is Lord Hanumana is asked to cross over to the seas and go to Lanka, and he says that, well, how can he do that? And then Jamun comes up and narrates him, and sort of encourages and calls of makes him realize the powers that he has of of flying and of reaching to unknown places. So I think religious texts have their own. They play a very integral, a very important role, and it is. I think they are generally the first texts from which we learn, and then we grow up to read other texts which are brought to us.
Wonderful. That's
Thank you.
been a very important beginning, sir. And I think as a curtain raiser workshop for the participants, you opened the vistas of thinking. I think it has sent us all into a thinking mode and introspective mode, and also a little bit of a guilt about the fact that we've been reading very few books nowadays. And I think with the advent of the Amazon, the Kindle, and the tablets, I think those beautiful friends and the beautiful minds called our books probably keep lying in the racks. I think you've given us a indicator to open the racks and take them along with our own development as youngsters in the schools or even in the colleges. I'm sure our teachers and students who are participating, they will send us some views and opinions, and even methodologies of better book reading, like sharing at the dinner time in the family, as Rekha ma'am said about her childhood, and about how on a Sunday it can be a picnic about book reading. It can be a maybe a sitting in the garden and talking about some of the classics which great authors have written. It's not just about games and sports. It is about playing the sport and the game with books also. So I think a lot of creative ideas are coming in, and I'm sure the students watching it all over the country also are up and about with some new ideas which we would like to know from them. So all of you, I think Aprajita will announce that once again. Do write to us and tell us more about what we can learn from great masters like Vikramji, and he's open to having young authors coming up forward and giving the titles of their possible small books and even
Sure.
maybe new areas of story development or storytelling for that matter. So with these
Absolutely.
words, I only can ask Vikramji to give us one final message. What is your sentiment on the future of India's young people in terms of helping them to belong to the books also, that sense of belongingness to the books? Any
Yeah. My
final
my
message from
final
your side?
message is my final message is that the kids and youngsters should raise their hands and demand right to read, and this right to read is not to be given to our community leaders or to the politicians, but it is to be given to the parents, to the teachers, and to their gurus, that we need books, and we need the time to read,
Right.
and let there be a communities reading. Before I end, I will not drag on, but I will just show one or two books that I have brought. This is Desh Ke Liye Kurban, the Hindi book, which is
Okay.
small profiles of Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev, Ram Prasad Bismil,
Oh,
Ashfaqullah, Rajendra
wonderful.
Lahari, Roshan Singh, Surya Sen, Chapekar Bandhu, Udham Singh, Khudiram Bose, Hemu Kalani, Kartar Singh Sarabha, Madan Lal Dhingra, Mangal Pandey, Bhai Bal Mukund, all of the great revolutionaries of Indian freedom struggle. And
Right.
two books which I would really like to show is of which we can introduce you to foreign artists, very major artists of the world. One is, of course, about who was Frida Kahlo. She is the Mexican artist. You must try to find about her and many of her contemporaries. And this is another book about little Chopin, about the Frederick Chopin, the great music composer like Beethoven or Mozart. And on this note, I would like to say thank you, Expressions India. Thank you, Dr. Napal. Thank you, Ms. Aparajita Dikshit, Ms. Rekha Chauhan, and Hemlata ji. And thanks all the listeners for being with us. And I do hope that this session would be able to make
Yes,
some
sir.
kind of a new beginning for the youngsters and the kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Wonderful. We'll be all walking together this journey, and this is a beginning. I think the few steps are a leap to the Adolescent Summit. Over to you, Prajita, and thanks, Rekha ma'am and Hemlata ji.
Thank
Thank
We'll,
you, sir. Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Dr. Jitendra Nagpal, sir, for giving us this opportunity to having this vision of having a book reading webinar, book reading session. Sir, thank you so much, Sri Kumar Vikram, sir. It has genuinely been a very enlightening session. The book example quoted and substantiated with your vast experience, sir, it's an honor for us to have you here. We are thankful to the National Book Trust India for being the knowledge partner to 9th International Adolescent Summit. There's just one request I have to all the adolescent peer educator. We are
yeah.
really looking forward to your book reviews, to your article writing on any of the topic that is mentioned in the, in the any of the guidelines that you have read for the International Adolescent Summit. Please come up with ideas. Please come up with the ideas and share it with us. We will surely include them in the 10th International Adolescent Summit and would like to modify the ways where we can better help you out in terms of book reading, in terms of everything possible. Thank you
And
so much.
even Prajita, as we mentioned in the inauguration, the one-page, two-page articles on their own perceptions and how these can be implemented for a better tomorrow of the youngsters. I think those articles, those write-ups will be incorporated and compiled into an encyclopedia.
Right.
And the National Book Trust and the Ministry of Education would certainly like to incorporate in their libraries also. And an acknowledgement in this regard will be given to all the adolescents, an acknowledgement from all the organizing teams over here. So please do that, and there'll be a
Yes.
lot to be discussed in the next few days. Keep your computers open and be there with us, and your ideas are always going to be fertile and futuristic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikram
And
sir, once again.
in
Thank
the
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the end, I would like to
Thank
say
you so much.
one line. We were talking about the emotions, and with all the emotion and love, Vikram sir is carrying these books for so long,
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
1.5 hours, and that is the love which is visible. And this is how every adolescent should be loving the books, and everything will flow in line. This is what I wanted to add it on. And this is what is missing. एक छोटा सा लैपटॉप उठा करके हम थक जाते हैं. And look at these, books and the heaviness. Heaviness is not felt when the emotions are connected this way. So love it, love themselves, and all the three skills: thinking skills, social skills, emotional skills can be developed starting with the book reading. Right, ma'am? Right, sir?
Wonderful.
Yes.
Right,
And I
ma'am.
think the message
Thank
is
you.
very clear that it's not just the garden of walking; it is the garden of reading also now.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir.
Absolutely.
We need to go to the garden to read and sit on a bench and share some of the classics written by youngsters tomorrow. So, adolescents of India, please write books, send the titles to us. We will like to read in the garden in the eras to come tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank
Have a beautiful day ahead, all of you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
Thank
you,
you
all
sir.
of
so
you.
Thank
much.
you, sir, once
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.